Well, the time has come. Welcome to my extremely in-depth, full spoiler review of Halo Campaign Evolved. Now, I have a lot that I need to talk about with this game, so I've had to split this video into two separate videos. Today, we are covering the base remake campaign, and then tomorrow we're going to be reviewing the Operation Meteorite Johnson prequel. I want to touch on some broader notes with this game first, and then I'm going to go through the campaign level by level sequentially and talk about all the good and all the bad in there. And so starting out with the broader notes, I'm sorry, I've got to bring this up first because it really did impact my experience with this game on all difficulties. Sprint doesn't work in Halo 1, especially in a Halo 1 that, for the most part, is as faithful as this is. I mean, you can skip entire encounters. Certain enemies, like the Flood and the Sentinels, literally can't keep up with you when you're sprinting. You can skip them entirely. To try and balance sprint, they've added kind of like a stopping power feature that I think was meant to be reminiscent of the original Halo 1 plasma rifle, where when you were hit by it, it would slow your movement and your aiming. But what happens now is you get pulled out of sprint by just any plasma weapon, which I find extremely frustrating in gameplay, to be honest. I feel like if you have to balance a mechanic like sprint by making it rather obnoxious to use in this way, then I feel like it just shouldn't be in the game. Most of the level design in this game is pretty faithful to the original in both its overall design and its scale, which just makes sprint clash so hard with that vision. The overall AI in this game is definitely weaker than Halo 1's as well. Now, I've already spoken about this to great length, so we won't dwell on it for too long, but the Covenant just do not feel as intelligent or reactive or dynamic, and the Flood are nowhere near as aggressive, which really affects the intensity that they bring to the later levels. And this all works in tandem with the lack of health system and also sprint to create a gameplay loop that just lacks the risk, the permanence, and the strategy of Combat Evolved. More so than really any other aspect of this game, the overall gameplay loop of Campaign Evolved does just feel like a watered down version of Halo 1. Hit feedback is an extremely mixed bag in this game, like two ends of the spectrum. So I think the Covenant are insanely satisfying to kill. The shields flare really well, loads of blood comes out of the grunts, the Jackal shield pop is great. The only exception is the brutes in the Johnson campaign that feel like shooting a brick wall, but we'll get to that tomorrow. The Sentinels are immensely satisfying. Again, they nailed their visual feedback in this game. But then, conversely, the Flood's visual feedback when getting shot really isn't that great in this game. Sometimes there's literally zero visual feedback when you hit them at all, again, like shooting a brick wall. They also don't seem to flinch at all, unlike in Halo 1, where they would visibly react to being shot in certain ways. They just don't feel as dynamic to shoot visually. And speaking of the visual design, the overall aesthetic of Campaign Evolved is something that I've touched on at great lengths already, so we'll only briefly stay on this for a moment because, to be honest, my thoughts are entirely unchanged. So I think that the interiors of the Pillar of Autumn are superb. They are an excellent modernization of the ship's original interior, and I also love the extra damaged areas that they added in the Maw as well. The natural worlds look fantastic. Many locations just look like near-perfect modernizations of their original designs that genuinely just look like what my brain always kind of internally upscaled them to. Covenant interiors look really good, but are maybe a little bit too bulbous in some areas for my liking, but it's really the Forerunner designs in this game that just, frankly, entirely missed their mark. The ring itself is extremely over-detailed and genuinely does lose that kind of ancient god weapon vibe that it used to have. But the main offender here is the architecture. It's just too shiny and monochromatic, and as a result, the ancient, monastic, and mysterious tones that it once established, which were key pillars for Halo 1's atmosphere, feel entirely absent from this game. Like, I genuinely can't put into words how much altering the Forerunner art style in this game hurts the overall atmosphere. And then also, the Covenant and Marine designs are literally just nothing like their Halo 1 counterparts at all, which is a great shame. Now, as for some stuff that I've not talked about yet, the lack of campaign scoring and campaign timing in a campaign-only game is quite honestly a joke. There is not one single reason why a campaign-only Halo game shouldn't be launching with those two features at the absolute bare minimum. There's also no extra modes either. Like, Firefight would have been the easiest slam dunk with this game, but it's just not there. And I'm sorry, but Remix mode does not count as an extra mode. It's, besides the visual modifiers, which are kind of cool for a little bit, it's no different to just playing the campaign regularly with schools on. Like, I don't understand why they put so much of a focus on this mode. And then the cherry on top is that there are literally 0 unlocks in this game at all. They wasted all that time making those ridiculous, ugly live service art style pre-order skins, but added nothing to unlock in-game at all. So yes, you don't get a single thing besides, of course, an achievement for beating this game on Legendary. No armor unlock or anything at all. That was all reserved for pre-order bonuses. But of course, the most important elements of this game are its levels. So let's begin with the Pillar of Autumn. And right off the jump, I really like the opening cutscene on the Pillar of Autumn. The extra shots of the longswords, especially when they start engaging the Covenant, really sell this idea of a full-scale naval conflict in a way that OG Halo 1 just never did. You also really get a sense of just how outnumbered and overwhelmed the Autumn is as well. The extra combat shots in the hallway are good, but their editing feels really unfinished, and this is a persistent issue throughout a lot of the cutscenes in this game. But there's a bit here where the camera kind of just awkwardly lingers on Johnson whilst he's not actually doing anything after he's done talking. There are a good few moments in this game's cutscenes that have these like awkward drawn out pauses where nothing's really happening. Although this cutscene does end really well because I like how Unseal the Hushed Casket is now the security code to thawing Chief out. Very cool little touch there. The bridge cutscene is alright, but there's yet another really awkward pause with no dialogue or music playing in the background where they've extended the cutscene. And then another one here right before Keyes addresses Chief, and these pauses kind of just play into the weirdly uncanny feeling that I described in my spoiler-free review. But make sure my daughter gets this is a really nice little touch that I hope, if they do a Halo 2 remake, is followed up on in that award ceremony at the start. I do like that you can still kill Captain Keyes. I mean, they even added more Cortana voice lines for it, which is pretty great, and even an achievement for trapping his invincible Marines in the observation pen. The scenes out the windows are really cool as well, and they do really make you feel like you're in the heart of a grand-scale naval battle. Gameplay-wise, Pillar of Autumn is pretty basic, but then again, it always was, so nothing's really changed there. My only complaint gameplay-wise is that these environments are just far too small for sprint. Now, going into Halo, one of the things that they kind of tried to hype up a little bit in some of the marketing for this game was that they'd made Johnson more of a character in the base Halo 1 remake campaign. And Halo is, of course, Johnson's gameplay introduction, but I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really feel like they'd actually done that. He has like maybe 1 or 2 extra lines, and that's it. It's hardly like he's a Halo 2 or Halo 3 tier side character here. I did like how the Forerunner architecture of the first beam tower was almost set up like a fortification with Marines on the wall. That kind of fit the vibe. And I also really like how they introduced the Jackal snipers on this level. They feel really at home in this game, actually. But unfortunately, Halo introduces one of my biggest criticisms with this remake, and that is the total lack of restored cut content. Remaking Halo 1 and not restoring all of the cut wildlife that has almost become synonymous with the game over the years, despite being cut, is criminal. Like, how do you, at the very least, not add the blind walls? That should have absolutely been a priority for this level, but clearly it wasn't. And visually speaking, I also have some issues with this level as well. I already said that I really like how the natural environments look, and Halo is a great example of that, and I do think they got the lighting mostly right in the bridge room, for example, but man, the Forerunner aesthetic in this game is just so bland and overly shiny and overly detailed in some areas as well. It really doesn't give off that creepy ancient feeling that the original did. And worse, something else that kind of feeds into that as well is that they cut the bridge activation cutscene. Now, honestly, I don't really care if the tech nowadays allows you to have little vignettes like that be seamless in gameplay, because that scene had real narrative and thematic significance. As far as the games were concerned, this was our first time as humans interacting with the technology that was left by our forefathers. And it gave off this grandiose sense of mystery that's just completely lost now that it happens off in the background. In fact, unfortunately, I'd imagine that most new players won't even notice the bridge extending, whereas back in the day that was a real focal point of the level. And the final cutscene is also really lacking as well. Unlike the original that had 3 different cutscenes based on which area you finished the level in, there's now just one universal cutscene where you end the level and fly off in the Pelican, which detracts from the overall dynamicness of this level, which I think is honestly its strongest suit. So, opening the Truth and Reconciliation, I did really like the presentation here. In particular, I love how they styled that oppressive red lighting in the Pelican Troop Bay to invoke the infill scene from Predator. That definitely is not a coincidence. They also seemingly took our advice and made the intro section stealthable as well. If you kill a target in one sniper shot, it won't alert any of the other Covenant, so, as I did here, you can clear these entire sections entirely undetected if you're careful enough. For the most part though, up until the ship interior, this is another very similar level to the original. There's not really much that's changed here, with honestly the only addition being Jackal snipers, which again I feel are very fitting. I do again though have a real issue with the removal of the boarding cutscene. Now, yeah, like, I get it, we have the tech nowadays to be able to have the ground to ship section be a seamless gameplay transition over a cutscene that loads another area, I get it, but I really think that this moment loses its charm by not having the cutscene. I mean, it's not even really given any significance, which again, it really does have. In the original version of this cutscene, it's like a brief moment of wonder and excitement for the Marines who are heading into the unknown. It kind of felt like one of those brief moments of happiness that you see soldiers get in war movies right before they head back into battle. It mixes up the tonal pacing a little bit, and its absence here vastly outweighs what minute cool factor came from seamlessly transitioning into the ship. Honestly, I feel like this is another one of those instances of the restrictions that Bungie had back in the day with the hardware actually allowing them to get more creative and providing a better product in the end. The interior of the ship is the first example of the level design being changed a little bit from the original, but being improved as a result. Like, there are a couple new connecting rooms and atriums that just sort of break up the repetitive nature of the hallways a bit, and I think they work really well. That said though, I do have some issues inside the ship. Firstly, Keyes dying is no longer a fail state. Now, I get that on Legendary this could be quite frustrating because he'd always just charge forward and die and you go back to the last checkpoint, but I feel like this is another instance, a micro instance, albeit, of the game just being watered down a little bit. It removes an element of friction, which yeah, at face value seems like a good thing, but it's overcoming that friction that makes for a memorable video game experience. And so now this rescue section really doesn't feel any different to the rest of the level. I also deeply hate how hard they telegraph the camo elites now. You literally walk into the room and Cortana will tell you that they're there and put nav points over their head. I mean, the whole point of them being invisible is that you can't see them and you don't know they're there, so they surprise you and you have to approach them differently to regular elites. But now you can just see exactly where they are. One of those decisions that I just find truly baffling. Why would you do this? Okay, we've already spoken at great length about these next 2 levels because they've been public for a while now, so I'll try and keep them short and brief. My main issue with the Silent Cartographer, as it always has been, is just how the Foreigner art style changes ruin its atmosphere. In the original, going underground felt like you were venturing into an ancient religious tomb or deeply sacred site of some sort, but now it just feels like another sterile futuristic alien facility. Sprint on this level is also an issue as well, again because the scale of the level hasn't really been increased that much. Sprint is just so busted here. The environments are way too small for it, and I really do fear for new players who just instinctively sprint everywhere because they're going to feel like the game is really poorly designed as a result, when it's not. It's just that these environments were never meant for sprint. But once again, I also have some issues with the cutscenes on this level as well. I think the intro cutscene, for example, is really cool in isolation. Like, as a video, I think it's really cool. It definitely has aura, but it's the first instance of just how disconnected these cutscenes feel from the actual game world. Like, the wreckage of that spirit that the Pelican destroys, of course, just vanishes because it isn't part of the level design. And then the cut to black before opening the level in the Pelican feels, again, really disjointed compared to the original Halo 1's POV fly-in. But the outro cutscene is worse in this regard because the entire island flyover section has just been cut. Seeing Foehammer fly over the island that we spent the entire level exploring, and then seeing how the underground tunnel is built into the island itself right beneath our feet, made the level feel more connected to the world design and in a way more grounded. But with this cutscene, that's no longer the case. And then a lot of these issues continue into Assault on the Control Room as well, like the intro cutscene for example. There are some really weird animation with the grunts here. Like, this guy is straight up just like stood with human posture, and they're all walking with a weirdly human posture as well. I mean, compared to the original, they just look kind of weird. I also think as well, although the dolly zoom on the grunt was a good idea, it being a grunt with a full face mask on where you can't see its eyes at all is really weird. Like, if we could see the grunt's eyes and we could see its pupils widening as the Pelican appears, then this shot really would have worked. But we're just staring at, frankly, an inanimate object, so it doesn't really have the same effect.
You're an inanimate fucking object!
Gameplay-wise, the only real changes here are the addition of new rooms, which I've already said I think work really, really well here to break up the monotony while still feeling faithful. But once again, the addition of Sprint really just doesn't work with how faithfully scaled so many of these environments are. The Scorpion section is really fun, and I genuinely cannot say this enough. The visual effects on vehicle explosions in this game are so good and make the vehicle sections of the game even better than they already are. Honestly, the visual effects team killed it with these vehicle effects. The final cutscene, though, I also have some issues with because it is tonally entirely different to the original. So the original cutscene felt wondrous, but simultaneously had this ominous undertone to it. The music the entire time, combined with Jen Taylor's almost bossy Cortana delivery, hinted that something really wasn't right about this ring, and of course this fed perfectly into the very slow build-up to the flirt. But in the new one, I feel like they don't blend the wondrous and the ominous very well at all. Instead of the two being kind of mixed together like they were in the original, creating this really unique atmosphere, it instead goes from extreme wonder and amazement 1 minute to extreme impending horror the next. The music is the biggest cause of this, but also the characterization of Cortana being so happy and chirpy just really impacts it as well. I see what they were going for here with the sudden tonal shift, but I just don't think it works as well as that really unique feel that the OG had by blending the two together. Overall, I think the first half of this game is, to be honest, pretty by the by. It's mostly just OG Halo 1. It is pretty faithful in many areas, but how faithful it is really clashes with the changes to the gameplay, the AI, and the aesthetic. It's the second half of the game where things start to change up a little bit, and I actually think for the better. Beginning with 343 Guilty Spark, which is the one level in this game that I have near unapologetic praise for. And for my litany of issues with this game, this level is one that I can frankly mostly just gush about. So Guilty Spark is the narrative turning point of Halo 1. It's the most important moment in the entire game, and thus the level that, above all else, they had to get right in this remake. And its opening is very strong. The darkness, the weather, the lighting in the troop bay, the music, even the aggressive design of the dead trees in the forest, everything gives off this unwelcoming feel. And the swamp only continues this. The overall feel of this swamp is a perfect modernization of the original in literally every way, and the increased graphical fidelity just works so well here. Environmental storytelling is perfect from the get-go as well. From the crashed pelican and the spirit that's setting the forest on fire, and the almost apparition-like silhouettes of combat forms in the hills, to the blood all over the entrance hall. This is going to make for an excellent first Flood experience for new fans. The overall framing of the first area really does invoke feelings of gothic horror to me, which is strange, but it really works, I feel. And this all continues really well inside the facility as well. It's quiet, there's signs of battle and blood everywhere, and the new ominous red glow on the containment room to subtly indicate there's been a containment breach is again just the perfect lead up. And then the Jenkins cutscene. I love the found footage direction of this cutscene. Of course, the original was always done in that direction, but I really feel like they could execute on that way better this time around, and they absolutely did. And I love how dark the containment room is as well. When the Flood get released, the overall frantic look and behavior of the Marines whilst they're being overwhelmed is genuinely perfect. I mean that in every sense of the word. They deserve full praise for nailing this level and this cutscene. And then when the gameplay begins as well, the new lighting in the containment room is also just perfect. I really like how, on this level in particular, they really played into ominous reds and deep oranges of the lighting. It really does help to set the tone. Once the outbreak is fully ongoing, descending down the facility and seeing the lower levels even deeper into the outbreak and consumed with biomass is a really great natural addition that honestly just feels like it always should have been there. They also kept the two Marines who died side by side with the two Jackals as well, which is my favourite environmental storytelling in the entirety of the franchise. I love that this is still there. My only issues with this level aren't actually issues that are specific to Guilty Spark, but rather broader issues. Firstly, unfortunately, the Flood biomass does have some orange glowy bits. They're nowhere near as egregious as Halo Wars 2 or every other modern zombie game that does this really contrived design, but I feel like if they were going to do any glow, they should have gone in a more like OG Halo 1 green glow, just to kind of keep it in keeping with the game's design. And secondly, I gotta be honest, the Flood AI in this game massively detracts from the frantic feeling and the intensity that this level used to have. The build-up to the Flood, narratively, visually, and atmospherically, is perfect, but how slow and passive the combat forms are when you first encounter them really kind of pulls the rug out from under that excellently crafted feel. They just don't have that oppressive intensity that they once had, which also really hurts the fear factor in their gameplay as well. And that brings us to the library. Now, the library is a very interesting one. It's actually kind of the black sheep of this game because it is the one level that has undergone significant foundational changes. And overall, I'm kind of mixed on them. So I think were this game a brand new Halo game with the Flood, then I feel like this take on the library would work really well as a brand new Flood level. But as a replacement for the library, I feel like it misses the mark. In the original, the library always had this kind of unique haunted house feel. Its vast, dark, and almost cavernous look, combined with the soundtrack suite that made heavy use of organs, gave it this really unique standout feel. Whereas here, it just feels like another generic Foreigner facility. Its scale is significantly reduced. It doesn't feel like massive and cavernous and daunting anymore. And how shiny and, again, monochromatic everything is just detracts from the creepy aura that it once had. The changes to the intro cutscene don't help either. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the addition of the first scene being in the quarantine zone surrounding the library. This is very thematically connected to Halo 2 and just helps to build the world. I love this addition. What I don't love is that that's all the cutscene is. The establishing shot going through the library is completely gone. You just appear in the facility, which again, I think causes it to lose a lot of the unique tone that it once had. Now, structure-wise, the library is still the same. You still go round the rooms to get to the elevators, but this time you go down the floors, not up. with each floor being progressively more consumed by the flood. And I do think that this gives each floor a very distinct look. I do like it. In a weird kind of way, it kind of reminds me of the Stronghold of Security from RuneScape. They've also turned the elevator sequences into basically Halo 2 Oracle elevator sequences, which does give them a little bit more of an interesting gameplay aspect. They've also added puzzle rooms now to break up the monotony. Now, I fucking love the idea of this, adore it, but I think the execution was far too simple. Instead of just hitting a few switches to activate light bridges, I genuinely wish they'd pulled some like Resident Evil shit here and had some rather intricate puzzles that make you genuinely use your brain to figure them out. And the music choices on this level were really strange as well, and these puzzle rooms are a great example. Like, firstly, the overall level doesn't use all of the library suite. It misses, I think, a few tracks that the original used, but then for some reason, Perchance to Dream plays in the last puzzle room, which feels entirely tonally disconnected from this facility and this level and this part of the narrative. I also think that the addition of silences everywhere just made it feel too much like Halo Infinite, to be honest. I get the idea, I get the intent behind it from a canonical perspective, but I just think it made the facility feel like another Halo Infinite Foreigner room. But in terms of Easter eggs, the Marvin Mabuto Easter egg is perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping for, and the fact that Spark even follows you into that Easter egg room and comments on Marvin is awesome. I really, really like that they added this. Don't get me wrong, I would have been gravely disappointed if they didn't, but still, it's great. Oh, and speaking of Spark, by the way, Tim Darbo's voice genuinely hasn't aged a bit since 2001. Spark is great in this. He does lose a little bit of his manic persona, not his rampant persona, because Spark was never rampant, just his like, sort of sometimes he'd do some like maniacal laughing in the original. He doesn't really do that here, which I think is a little bit lackluster, but Tim Darbo did a great job. Now, the biggest addition here is the tank form, and I'm gonna be honest, I found the introduction of this guy to be a little bit lackluster, quite honestly. I was hoping for like a quite intense gameplay vignette moment where you saw it like smashing on the walls of like a containment room or something and then breaking through the glass. You don't get that. It just kind of drops out of the roof, and that's it. And I think the idea was they wanted to sort of jump scare you with it, but it didn't jump scare me at all. It just felt a bit like, oh, like I was hoping you'd do something more with that. But again, I gotta just touch on this briefly. The AI of the Flood really impacts the intensity of this level, in particular the holdout sections. I mean, their AI, in addition to sprint, it doesn't work, man. It genuinely doesn't work. You can train the Flood like you're playing fucking Doris. I was literally doing this, by the way. This gameplay you're watching right now, this is on Legendary. This is on Legendary difficulty, and I'm training the Flood with sprint. They can't catch up to me. How is that functional? And then also the final cut-to-cut scene is again another instance of it just feeling so jarring. The lighting is different, you're in a completely different place. It just feels disconnected from gameplay. Now, 2 Betrayals is largely considered Halo 1's best overall level, at least I consider it that, because it was a level where Bungie kind of just threw the entire sandbox at you. Vehicles, weapons, Flood, Covenant, Sentinels, everything is in this level. And honestly, I think that's kind of still the case here. But the intro cutscene is definitely going to be a bit of a talking point. So the thing I have to touch on most, which is honestly one of my favorite things about this game in general, is that they didn't rewrite it. Which means that yes, humans are still Foreigner. Spark's line about why would you hesitate to do what you've already done is exactly the same. But that said, this is another cutscene with more of those weird dramatic pauses that just feel really awkward. And then, once again, the cut to gameplay is jarring because the lighting in the room is completely different. Now, in terms of gameplay, one of the best changes to this level is a thematic change that actually influences gameplay a ton in a really cool way, and that's the Flood biomass. So of course it's spreading throughout the valley, which is a really great thematic touch, but they also use it to force you to go through both interior sections in different ways, and also outside to force you to use parts of the terrain that normally weren't even passable, which is awesome. I really like this addition because it plays into the severity of the outbreak whilst making an organic and really fun change to your flow through the level. My only real problem with 2 Betrayals is the fact that it's not snowing, because I always liked how kind of climactic that felt in the original. Of course there's snow everywhere, but it's not actually snowing. Oh, and I'm also not keen on the fact that you no longer have to overload your shields by walking into the phase pulse generator to disable it anymore. Instead, you just go around the outside of the room and shoot 3 boxes. Like, I don't know, I feel like that makes these sections way less tense and honestly more boring, to be honest. And it's another little example of the whole watering down thing. Also, as well, sprint does not play well with these because once again, you can just sprint around the outside of the room so quickly, destroy all the boxes and leave. Like, this clip here is on Legendary. The Sentinels can't even catch up to me on Legendary. Sprint in this game doesn't work. And that leads us into keys, which I have mostly actually positive thoughts about, but the intro cutscene is a little bit weird. I feel like the animation of the Flood and the Elites here is kind of sluggish a little bit, but I will say I love that they kept the upside down coordinates gag. That gag is just so iconic, and actually they expand on it, but more on that in a minute. The environment, its storytelling, and the overall visuals of Keys are genuinely excellent. Like, the ship is in total disrepair, there's blood, biomass, bodies, and damage everywhere. The colors of the canyon are beautiful, the green glow of the coolant is perfect, and it blends with the areas that are on fire so well to create a truly beautiful look of chaos. And then also inside, the biomass increasing the closer you get to the proto-gravemind is, again, amazing. This was one of the few moments playing this game where I was genuinely wowed. And I will say the tightness of the level design here does do a good job at helping to ramp up the intensity of the Flood and make them feel a little bit more oppressive. As you're heading towards Keys, there's even more dialogue of him fighting off the parasite, and at one point he even mentions Halsey, which was pretty cool, and it all builds to, again, a really tonally great cutscene. The only downside being that now, unfortunately, Chief no longer caves Keys' head in, which is a bit of a shame. This level overall is excellent, but once again, my main issue with Keys is the outro cutscene, which is arguably the most jarring and disconnected of all of them. So, to end the level, you hijack a Banshee on the right side of the hangar that's in the air, and the level ends when you're in the Banshee flying. Then, the cutscene starts, the room is an entirely different colour and light level, there's no damage to it, and Chief is on the left side floor of the hangar, getting in the Banshee. I genuinely feel like there was very little communication between the teams working on the cutscenes and the teams making the levels with this game's development because they feel so disconnected. And finally, that brings us to the Maw. Now, I really see what they were going for with that opening cutscene. Those long, lingering shots really do kind of build the stakes of the level quite well. But at the same time, I feel like the original fly around worked as a much better establishing shot because it kind of naturally synced up with Chief and the Banshee and felt very seamless and natural. But I will say, one thing I love in this cutscene is how Chief gets one back on Cortana for the upside down coordinate data.
You did that on purpose, didn't you?
There must have been something wrong with the coordinate data.
That is a genuinely excellent line. It's tiny, it's really short, and it's overall insignificant, but that feels legitimately like a Joe Staten Bungie tier line. Now, I said this already, but I really love the visual design of the Maw. The way that they use fire in particular to have certain rooms and certain areas literally look like the depths of hell is awesome. This is another instance of the environment looking exactly like I always thought it did. I'm also really happy that they kept Guilty Spark's other human fauna line as well. In fact, they added to that line. I mean, you can literally see him sifting through images and data of human history. Honestly, I gotta be honest, this game's crowning triumph for me is the fact that it upheld that human-foreigner connection. I genuinely expected them just to completely retcon it, and I'm very happy to be wrong on that. And the game does end very well, I will say. The Warthog run is genuinely perfect. They did exactly what they needed to do with it. They redesigned it to fit more in with Bungie's original concepts, along with making it a little bit more logical, but at the same time, it still feels very faithful. They absolutely nailed it. That outdoor section in particular, where you drive through the crack in the ship and Foehammer strafes over the sands in front of you, is so cinematic. I love it. And it ends with a pretty cool cutscene of Chief fighting off the tank, which has a shot in it that I'm pretty sure is heavily inspired by the Shelob from Return of the King, before of course Chief finishes the tank off with Key's Magnum. So the game does end on a very good note, and the second half of the game I would say is drastically better than the first. And so I guess with all of this in mind, how do I feel now about the prospect of Halo 2 and Halo 3 remakes done in this vein? Well, even though we ended on a good note, I still don't feel all that great about Halo 2 and Halo 3 being remade in this style. This game absolutely has some great qualities, like they nailed Guilty Spark, they nailed the Warthog run, they nailed Keys. There are some elements of the visual design that they nailed as well, and also some elements of the soundscape that are really good too. But broadly speaking, I just can't help but return to my original thoughts that really prevailed throughout the entire game, that this just feels like a watered down version of Halo 1. I still think that this is very much a 7 out of 10 game overall, which isn't horrifically cataclysmically bad. A 7 out of 10 is not awful, but existing in the legacy of Bungie's trilogy, it is very lackluster in comparison. And I gotta say, absolutely was not worth waiting 4 years after Halo Infinite 4, but that's kind of a different argument. This attempt at a unified Halo art style really hurt the world of Campaign Evolved, and I think it will just do the exact same thing again to Halo 2 and Halo 3, and don't even get me started on the gameplay changes. The thought of Halo 2 as Sprint just makes my soul hurt. This is not a bad video game, but it's nowhere near the masterpiece that Halo 1 was, and frankly, I would really rather resources go to other projects over remakes of the next few games that also just end up being watered down versions of their original selves. I just don't think that's worth it. There are so many other projects that I would rather than put those resources into. And so, those are my overall thoughts on Campaign Evolved. Let me know your thoughts down below in the description, and if you agree or disagree with anything I said, let me hear it down below. I had a lot I wanted to talk about very clearly, so I'm going to round this one out there. I want to give a huge thank you to all of my amazing patrons for the continued support over there as per usual. Thank you all so much, and thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one.